Forget everything you know about painting crashing waves in watercolor. For years, I struggled with capturing the raw power of breaking waves until I discovered this unconventional method completely by accident. While other artists recycle the same methods, I'm going to reveal a breakthrough approach that allows you to capture the raw movement of waves without the need for masking fluid, negative painting, or whitewash. If your beach scenes fall flat or lack energy, this is the video that changes all of that. This is the drawing for the seascape. I'm starting with the sky and dropping in some Indanthrone blue, and then dropping in some water to get some fading and blending. In this part of the sky, I'm pre-wetting the paper so I can work directly wet on wet. This gives a really soft effect. With a few dabs of water, I can get some blossoms in the clouds. Now I'm mixing up the color for the water, which is a combination of Phthalo turquoise and Indanthrone blue. I've dropped in a little bit of phthalo green. Now this is the part that's leading up to the first crashing wave. I've slowed the video down so you can see how I'm continuing to work with wet paint. And now I'm dropping in the paint on the right side so that there's wet paint on both the left and the right. Though the paint is wet, it will start to dry. So we'll cause a backwash on purpose. Why do artists hate backwashes? Well, I'll show you. Here's a quick demonstration of backwashes when I don't want one. So I'm doing a gradient wash or I'm doing a flat wash. If I drop in pigment or water that is wetter than what's on the paper, you can see this backwash form. But it can be tricky. Sometimes when you think you've got the same amount of wetness on your brush as you do on your paper, you can still get a backwash. See, that doesn't look so bad, but just wait. Here's another example. Nice little flat wash, and then I go back and I fiddle with it. Here's how they look when they're dry. If you want a flat wash or you want a gradient wash, you certainly don't want these. And you can see in every single case you've got hard lines, uncontrolled lines. If that's not what you're going for, it just doesn't look right. Back to our painting and the use of a backwash that we want. I want you to see the setup with the drying but still wet paint both on the left and right side of this wave that's going to crest and crash. I'm taking a brush that's loaded with clear water. Now it doesn't look that way because it's picked up the pigment that's on the paper, but just wait. That water is moving into the pigment on both sides of the wave, on the water coming into the shore and on the underside of the wave. And already you can start to see that that water is moving down and up. So we get the splash of the waves up and then the curling of the wave going down. Here's a comparison. Right after I added the water, and now after the water has moved on the paper. Now I'm adding in a little bit of the shoreline while this backwash is still wet. Now I've just lifted a little bit, but what that does is now you're seeing spray that is in front of the land. Normally you'd have to use masking fluid or white wash to get that effect. Water is moving into that land because it's still a little bit wet. That's the beauty of this method. The water is working for you. Now I'm going back and actually lifting and then going back with more clear water to get more control over this backwash. Again, I want you to see a before and after. It's pretty dramatic, isn't it? All right, moving on to the next breaking wave. I'm using the same technique where I want the wave to crash, I have wet paint on either side of it. And while I'm doing this setup, take a look at the wave that I just did. It's continuing to change. So I'm adding just a little bit more wet paint just to make sure that I've got what I need. And there's a still so you can really study and see what it's like. And here's the clear water. So I've added water and now I'm lifting. I'm going back to that original wave because I'm trying to get a little bit whiter. See how just dabbing in a little bit of water really pushes the pigment out of the way. I mean, this is kind of an addictive technique. So there's a little bit of a hard edge because the paint was starting to dry. I'm going to deal with that. See, so lifting a little bit, so I'm smudging that line that I created accidentally, and now it's looking a lot more rounded. Now I'm just filling in some of the water behind the wave. And that'll help with the contrast between the wave and the water behind it. And you don't have to use a liner brush. I mean, you could use a rigger. You could use just a brush with a really fine tip, so you have the kind of control of being able to put down the amount of water that you want. Right now, I'm just putting in some dark value with some Indanthrone blue to start to depict the shadow of the wave. Now I'm coming in with some phthalo green, and that'll blend nicely with the phthalo turquoise. So now, guess what's happening? This is the setup for the third crashing wave. And there's a still, just so you can get a good look at it. All right, time for the clean water. And a little lifting. Okay, ready for wave number 4? And it doesn't always go the way you expect. In wave number 4, it pulled in some of the raw umber that I had put into the water behind it, so I tilted the board so I could control where I wanted the water to go. So now I'm starting to get that crashing effect with the water. So I discovered this really by accident. I was getting ready to teach a class and practicing some face-on seascapes where you're just standing on the shore looking at the waves coming in you directly, no angle like this composition has. I laid down some cobalt blue and then I came back with some yellow and I got a backwash. I got a beautiful backwash and I was stunned. So I thought, could I use that with clear water? What would that do? And so I tried it, and it was really stunning to see what water could do with a technique that it tends to be the bane of watercolor artists. We're always complaining about backwashes and blossoms and blooms, and you don't want them, you don't want them, you don't want them. Well, sometimes you do. Now this is a little out of focus, but I wanted you to see with just a little bit of water, because that pigment's still just a little bit wet, it's still making a shape. You can see it better now that I've pulled the camera back. A few more touch-ups on the waves. And again, going back and adding in some deeper values so you can see the shadow that you'll see in a wave. It can be tricky because depending on the light, you might see shadow, you might see light filtering through the wave, you might see light at the top of the wave and shadow on the bottom. The crashing water itself can cause shadows. So for the sand, I'm using a combination of yellow ochre and burnt sienna. I'm alternating between the sandy color and some green color, which is mostly diluted undersea green, because in the distance the vegetation is going to sort of blend in with the landscape. Now that's a little bit of shadow green on top of that. These are the shadows on the foam. Dropping in some dune grass. This is Serpentine Genuine with some yellow ochre. And making the shadows with undersea green. The shadow color on the sand is a combination of phthalo blue with some raw umber. I definitely had to practice to get this to work right. I sure hope you give this a try for your seascapes, especially if the detail of painting a crashing a wave seems overwhelming. And start small. Start in something that doesn't matter very much. Do it in your sketchbook. That way you can practice and you don't have to show anybody.